Whether to use or not to use a comma in a relative clause will depend on whether we have a restrictive relative clause or a non-restrictive relative clause. What is the difference between the two? A restrictive relative clause, also known as a defining relative clause, is a relative clause that is essential to the understanding of the meaning of the noun that they modify. That is to say, if we remove this relative clause, there will be confusion as to what the noun exactly refers to. It is called restrictive because our interpretation of the real meaning of the noun in question is restricted by this relative clause. So it is an integral part of the noun phrase, and therefore it is essential and it contributes meaning to the noun. It is also called defining relative clause because it helps us define what is meant by the noun. A non-restrictive relative clause, on the other hand, is one that provides only extra information. When we remove it, the meaning that we give to the noun is not affected. Just imagine that I tell you, for example, a number of stories, and one of them makes you cry. The next morning, I come to you and say, the story is not true. You might retort, which story are you talking about? Here I come and define the term story. So I'm going to use a defining relative clause. I will restrict the meaning of story by inserting a restrictive relative clause. I should respond, the story which made you cry. So here, which made you cry is necessary to cancel this confusion. So I am defining the story by inserting this relative clause there. Of course, because it's essential, we do not put, the relative clause between the two commas. We write directly. Now let's move to the other example. Marrakesh, which is a touristic city, is my brother's next destination. Now, just imagine I say, Marrakesh is my brother's next destination. Of course, you may not, as you did with the story, ask me what Marrakesh are you talking about, or which Marrakesh are you talking about? For the simple reason that the very word Marrakesh defines itself. We don't have many cities by the name of Marrakesh. So here, which is a touristic city, is extra information. Which is a touristic city is a relative clause that is non-defining, because it does not define Marrakesh, because Marrakesh is self-defined, and it does not restrict our interpretation of Marrakesh. Okay? So it's non-restrictive, non-defining. We put, this clause between two commas. Think of the commas as brackets, which we use to add extra pieces of information. Bottom line, when the relative clause is essential to the meaning of the noun, no commas needed. When the relative clause is not essential to commas.